What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 101 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, August 18th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malamo. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the world of baseball as both New York teams were in action this weekend. And we'll start things with the New York Yankees as they went down to St. Louis for a three-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals. And this weekend was all about the New York Yankees. Across baseball, it was as well. We'll get to that in just a bit. But the Yankees going up against a tough St. Louis Cardinals team that's still fighting really hard to break into that NL wildcard picture. They're still really far out now, and especially after this series where the Yankees end up taking the sweep. They sweep the Cardinals 3-0, and the story of this series for New York was all about their offense starting hot. They really did so very well in all three of these games. They got to this St. Louis rotation very well, and that really was the story for the Yankees. It all started on Friday evening, where the Yankees end up winning it 4-3. Luis Gil gets the win, his first win of the year. Looked really, really good. Probably his best outing of the year so far. He goes 5 1/3, 4 hits allowed, just one earned run with 3 walks and 4 Ks, and getting over the 5th inning threshold and getting into that 6th inning. He still had 83 pitches on the day. Probably could have gone even further into this game, but the Yankees really liked what they saw in getting into that 6th inning, and give credit to Luis Gil. He looked really, really good, and he really had a lot of cushion with this Yankees offense that he talked about starting off hot when Aaron Judge hits an RBI ground out in the first to give the Yankees a 1-0 lead, and it's followed by Jazz Chisholm hitting a 2-run home run to right field to give the Yankees a 3-0 lead, and all of a sudden, Luis Gil, the pressure is off, a 3-0 lead in the first inning, and then Jason Dominguez ended up adding on shortly after in the 3rd inning with a RBI single himself, and it was 4-0 Yankees in the blink of an eye. They did end up giving up a couple runs once Luis Gil goes out of the game, and it was Camilo Doval who comes in after Mark Leiter Jr., and Doval just did not have his best stuff on the day. Just 2/3 of an inning, 1 hit allowed with 2 earned runs, 1 walk, and 2 strikeouts on 17 pitches. Just really not a great outing for him, but he's lucky that he had a guy in Luke Weaver that came in behind him and shut things down for the most part. He goes an inning and a third, with 1 hit allowed, no earned runs, no walks, 2 Ks for Luke Weaver, and then they rely on the big man in the back end of that bullpen. Obviously, Devin Williams has gone through his struggles this year, and David Bednar, the trade deadline acquisition for the Yankees, he's the closer now, and he's done a great job of it so far since joining this Yankees team. He goes 1 inning, no hits, no runs, no walks, and 2 Ks, and that's exactly what you want in a closer. 15 pitches is all it took in the 9th, and the Yankees end up taking game 1 of this 3-game set 4-3. Then you go into Saturday's game, and Max Fried on the mound. It's not been great for Fried recently, but he ends up getting the win somehow in this game. Really bad outing for him in the end. He goes 5 innings with 8 hits allowed, 7 earned runs, 1 walk, and 6 Ks. The 7 earned runs just really came at Fried very quickly in this game, and it all started, and the Yankees, another hot start in this series, and another hot start in one of these games, getting to the St. Louis rotation. They end up getting to Sonny Gray this time, and it was Aaron Judge who hit a RBI double in the first. Dominguez followed with an RBI single, and it's 2-0 Yankees in the blink of an eye, but Max Fried really struggled first and second inning. He gives up the big bomb to Mason Wynn that ended up giving St. Louis the 5-2 lead. Yankees did a great job of pouncing back in this game, and they really did so with urgency, and Ben Rice was the story. After Aaron Judge hits a solo bomb, Ben Rice in the 4th inning gives the Yankees a 6-5 lead with a 3-run bomb. Then he goes and has another extra base hit, a bases clearing double that ended up giving the Yankees a 9-5 lead, and they really closed things out from there. They win this one 12-8, and great job by this Yankees team and the Yankee bullpen, especially coming in behind Max Fried, just 1 earned run from the entire four guys that came in. And good job by Devin Williams, who came in. And in one inning, he pitched in the sixth, and he ends up striking out all three batters. So great job by Williams. Positive sign for the Yankees, but they really did a good job of locking things down. This bullpen did, and really closing this game out. The offense was red hot. They put up 12 runs on the Cardinals in a 12-8 win that they head into Sunday looking for the series sweep. And it was not an easy game for the Yankees, as they ended up not scoring till the fourth inning, but they ended up getting to the Cardinal rotation once again. It was Miles Mikolas on the mound for St. Louis in this one. He goes 5 innings with 4 hits allowed, 3 earned runs, 5 walks, and just 1 strikeout. The Yankee bats were feeling good, and they end up putting up 3 runs in the fourth to give them a 3-0 lead. St. Louis bounced back, as they did cause trouble to this Yankee rotation, and just came down to some bad plays by the Yankees, couple of errors that ended up leading to runs, and the Cardinals ended up taking a 4-3 lead into the seventh, but the Yankees tied it up with Bellinger on a sac fly, and then Bellinger ended up reaching on an infield single that ended up giving the Yankees the lead, a 6-4 lead. They kept adding on Chisholm and Goldschmidt soon after, and the Yankees put up 4 runs in the ninth to close out the sweep and close out the victory against the St. Louis Cardinals. A great weekend set for this Yankees team, and exactly what they needed, especially with the Cleveland Guardians in action all weekend long against the Atlanta Braves, who have had a horrendous season in the National League East. However, they continue to find ways to really haunt teams and beat big teams. They did so to the Mets a couple of weeks ago, or last week they did so, and really they did so again against the Cleveland Guardians. They sweep Cleveland 3-0, and that gives the Yankees a very nice cushion as they now head into another series against a tough opponent, a tough division rival in the Tampa Bay Rays. But the Yankees have a 3.5-game cushion for the final wild card spot. Also sweeping the Cardinals, they end up catching up to Seattle and Boston. Boston ended up losing on Sunday to the Miami Marlins, and they end up relying on the Seattle Mariners, who lost 2 games out of 3 to the New York Mets, who we'll get to in just a little bit. But the Yankees end up having a little bit of breathing room in that wild card picture. A huge weekend for New York, and they head into a 2-game set against the Tampa Bay Rays. Really a new one for this Yankees team. 2 games, that's all it is, down at George Steinbrenner Field in Tampa Bay, and it's going to be a tough series for the Yankees. However, they are going up against a Rays team that has just completely fallen apart since the beginning of July. The worst record in all of baseball, 14-26, and yes, a lot of those games were on the road. They played 40 games since July 1st, and 29 of them were on the road. They went 9-20 in those games on the road, just 5-6, 11 games at home, and they come back home for a 2-game set against the Yankees. And really knowing how the Rays play against the Yankees, not going to be an easy series, as it's going to be Carlos Rodon on the mound going up against Shane Baz, as Rodon comes into this outing 12-7 on the year, a 3.25 ERA. Really good stuff recently by Rodon, and Shane Baz 8-9 on the year, a 4.93 ERA. Then you look at Wednesday's game, and it's going to be Cam Schlittler on the mound once again for the Yankees, but it's not going to be an easy one. He's got a tough pitcher on the other side in Drew Rasmussen, who's 10-5 on the year, 2.60 ERA with a whip under 1, and that's really a tough pitcher to go up against, and Rasmussen's going to give Schlittler probably a hard time in this one, as got to keep it close and got to keep the runs down for this Rays offense. So we'll see what happens, but it all starts 7:35 tomorrow night as the Yankees take on the Tampa Bay Rays for a 2-game set down at George Steinbrenner Field down in Tampa. Let's move things to the other side of New York, as the New York Mets were also in action this weekend. And after the Mets really went through a rough spell, they lost 14 of 16. They bounced back with a couple of wins, really unexpected with how bad this New York Mets team has been playing. They end up winning the series against a tough Seattle Mariners team, a 3-game set against the Mariners, 2 games at Citi Field. The final one down in Williamsport at the Little League World Series, the Little League Classic, and the Mets end up taking 2 out of 3 from the Mariners. It did not start off pretty for New York. Another blown lead on Friday evening where they went in and had a lead for a while in this game, but really a disaster when the bullpen came in, and all of a sudden a bad couple of innings, especially the 7th inning where Seattle puts up a 5-spot and New York can't really cut back on that deficit. Ryan Helsley ends up getting credited with the loss, who's been really bad so far this year since joining the Mets. He only goes a third of an inning in this one. 2 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, no walks, and just a strikeout. But the Mets bullpen just completely imploded in this game. Helsley started it off, and then it was Brooks Raley who gave up 3 earned runs. Frankie Montas came in to pitch 2 innings when the Mets were already down 5 runs in this game, and a really bad outing for this Mets bullpen. A bunch of guys really struggling, and they end up dropping the first game of the series and only sat a half a game ahead of the Cincinnati Reds after Friday's game. But they got some luck as the Reds were going up against a very hot Milwaukee Brewers team, and the Brewers ended up taking the first 2 games of that series before the Reds ended up walking it off in the final game on Sunday. But it gave the Mets some breathing room, and they did capitalize on it because they did grab 2 straight wins to finish off this series. It all started on Saturday with a wonderful debut. I mean, really cannot be overstated how great of an outing Nolan McLean had in his MLB debut. He was red hot in this one, and he goes 5 1/3 innings with 2 hits allowed, no runs, with 4 walks and 8 Ks. The 8 strikeouts had really Seattle bats really missing. I mean, just looking really bad. And McLean really made a statement for himself going into the 6th inning, and it was really hard for Carlos Mendoza to really take him out of this game. He ends up getting booed by the fans because of it, and really he goes, I would have booed myself with how great McLean was pitching in this one. And then you go into the 7th inning, or the 6th inning, and you're thinking, all right, well, the Mets really have to rely on their bullpen. The bullpen's been imploding every single game, but they did a great job, and you have to really give credit to this Mets bullpen, who comes into the game and ends up locking things down. It was only Edwin Diaz who came into the game, ended up getting the 6-out save, but he was the only guy that gave up an earned run. But it was just a couple of guys that the Mets needed to rely on to really lock things down behind McLean. Gregory Soto goes an inning and 2/3 with no hits allowed, no runs, no walks, and 2 Ks. Just great pitching out of the pen. And then Edwin Diaz, I mentioned, just the 1 earned run for him on a Suarez solo bomb in the 9th. But I mean, the Mets offense did a great job as well of really pushing along and really getting to Brian Wu in this game. Wu ends up going 6 innings and continues that remarkable streak that he has to start the season. 24 straight games now, and 24 games to start the season that he's gone 6 innings and 2 walks or fewer as well. The longest active streak in baseball. Now 46 consecutive games with 2 walks or fewer. Just remarkable pitcher that Brian Wu is, and he's very underrated in the Seattle rotation. But the Mets were able to get to him and got 6 hits on him in the end, and that's really what you're looking for from this Mets lineup. They end up adding a couple of runs in the 7th with Juan Soto hitting a sac fly, followed by Pete Alonso with an RBI double. And the Mets end up winning at 3-1. A great win by New York, and a much needed win after they had dropped 3 in a row. The last 2 to Atlanta, and the first game of the series to Seattle. But then you go into Sunday's game, and this one's a tough matchup. They have Clay Holmes on the mound, and he's going up against a tough pitcher on the other side, and George Kirby. And Kirby, with his worst outing of the season by far, you would say. I mean, he was really bad in this one, and you got to give credit to the Mets offense, who really pounced on him in the 2nd inning. They end up getting 3 runs up on the board, but Kirby's day is done after 4 2/3. He gave up 12 hits with 7 earned runs, 3 walks and 4 Ks, just completely obliterated by this Mets offense. And they did so again in the 5th with Mark Vientos hitting a 3-run bomb into right field. Lindor added an RBI double. I mean, that was the day for George Kirby. All of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, 5th inning, it's 7-1 in favor of the New York Mets. And you got to give credit as well to a guy like Clay Holmes, who has had a couple of really rough outings since the All-Star break. He had an ERA over 5 since the All-Star break coming into this one, and he was really, really good. Locked things down with 5 innings, 5 hits allowed, just 1 earned run with just 1 walk and 4 Ks, and that's a real positive sign with the walks that have hurt Clay Holmes recently. Just the 1 walk on the day against a tough and gritty Seattle lineup. They had no answers for Clay Holmes in this one, and give credit to the Mets bullpen. They locked things down. Of course, Cal Raleigh had a statement for the crowd at the Little League Classic, hits a 2-run bomb for another home run for Cal Raleigh, and it was a tough series for the Mets going up against him, but they end up taking 2 out of 3 from the Seattle Mariners, a much-needed series for this Mets team, and they finally get a couple of easier series that they could go up against and really a weaker opponent as they head down to Washington, and it's a 3-game set against the Washington Nationals, and this one should be a breeze, you would think, for the New York Mets. And it all starts Tuesday night with David Peterson on the mound going up against Jake Irvin. Irvin's had a couple of outings against the Mets this year. One really good down in Washington, one really bad back up in Queens, and it's going to be David Peterson on the other side, who's had a couple of shaky outings recently, but he does think back to that outing against Washington back up in Queens just a couple of months ago, where he had that complete game shutout against the Nationals and locked things down for a great game for him, and we'll see what happens. He's had a couple of shaky outings recently. 7-5 on the year. The ERA now over 3 after it was hanging in the mid-2s for a while, and now it's over 3. But David Peterson in a game against this Washington team that's struggling really badly since June 13th, the same time as the New York Mets, but also since the middle of July or the beginning of July. They're right there with the Tampa Bay Rays, who I talked about a moment ago. It's really been ugly for this Washington Nationals team, and they go up against the Mets team that's hungry for more wins right now, as they have just a little bit of a cushion of against the Cincinnati Reds. Of course, that can change tonight with Cincinnati in action against the Angels out west, but the Mets have a 1.5 game lead for the final wild card spot, and really looking to grab wins in bunches right now, as they have a couple of tough series coming up. And we know how Met fans really feel about trips down to Atlanta. It's never pretty, and they have a 3-game set after this Washington series against Atlanta at Truist Park, followed by a very tough series where the Phillies come to town, and it's going to be a 3-game set against Philadelphia. And that's going to be a real tough series as they take on the Phillies for really a series that's going to look towards the top of the National League East. Can the Mets mount to come back in the division? We'll see what happens for that one. But their focus right now is sweep the Nationals, get the mojo back, and they did so very well against Seattle with those last 2 wins. Can they keep that going in this next series? So we'll see what happens, but make sure you tune in all series long. It all starts 6:45 tomorrow night with Peterson going up against Irvin down in D.C. But that will do it for episode 101 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Malum, and thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Friday.